The Minnesota Timberwolves have been very, very bad this year. They have the league's worst record of 14-41 and are ranked among the NBA's bottom 5 teams by both offensive and defensive rating. They've been wrecked by injuries, fired a coach, had a player charged with a felony, and basically had everything that could go wrong. However, in the midst of all that terrible basketball, the Timberwolves have remarkably shown some of the foundations of a great team with a generational superstar talent. So today, let's get into why the future looks bright for a team that's present looks so dark. With very few exceptions, a top 10 player is basically a must-have for any team that's trying to contend in the NBA, and the Timberwolves have a guy who, at 25 years old, is marching towards that status. KarlAnthony Towns is a historically great offensive talent, and it's remarkable how much we've neglected his continued progress because of a lack of team success that he has done everything in his power to combat. The Timberwolves are not a bad team when Cat plays. They get outscored by 1.2 points per 100 possessions, making them just a tick below league average. When he doesn't play, they're outscored by 12.3 points per 100, giving him one of the league's highest on-off differentials and making the Timberwolves without him the equivalent of a 13-win team, one of the worst ever. The good news is, Cat apparently plans to continue carrying this team, as not only is he under contract through 2024, but he's repeatedly stated that he wants to build a legacy in Minnesota. Things change fast in the NBA, but that does still matter, and things aren't getting worse from here. In fact, they can only get a lot better, so I do think Cat is here for the long haul. Now, just looking at Towns' production, he is already among a very special class historically at just 25 years old, averaging basically 25 points, 11 rebounds, and 4.5 assists per game on 49, 39, 88 splits on the year. The only players to ever average 25, 10, and 4 on 39% shooting from deep in a season are Larry Bird once, Nikola Jokic once, and Cat the last 2 seasons. While those two obviously remain a class above Cat at this point, I believe he has the potential to be the most versatile scoring big man ever, which is certainly not a bad title to hold. The primary reason for that is that he's already the greatest three-point shooting big man of all time. We've never seen another center knock him down from beyond the arc with the volume, efficiency, and degree of difficulty of Cat over the past 2 years, in which he's made 2.8 three-pointers per game on 40.2% shooting, a mark that no other 6'11" or taller player has ever eclipsed in a single season. That shooting brings, of course, constant floor spacing value, as Cat's man has to remain hugged to him at all times or risk getting burned from deep. This is particularly dangerous out of the pick and roll, where Cat currently ranks in the 73rd percentile and is able to act as a high-level threat even without elite athleticism rolling to the rim because he's maybe the most lethal popper there is. Outside of that, the Timberwolves will occasionally even run designed actions to weaponize Cat shooting from deep off the ball by, say, setting a pin down for him and running him along the baseline, and that just doesn't happen with big men. But the most unprecedented part about Cat's perimeter shot making is his ability to create for himself. The man is 22 of 55 on step-back threes over the last 2 years. That's 44% makes on close to 1 attempt a game. When at 7 feet tall, you can get your own shot from beyond the arc whenever and hit it very efficiently, that is terrifying. And make no mistake, the step back is a shot that takes time for players to fully develop, so it's not at all unreasonable to expect Cat to turn that into a more primary weapon in his arsenal as the years go by, which is just unthinkable. Cat also has the legitimate ability to create for himself from the perimeter elsewhere, either attacking closeouts with pump fakes or just straight up taking dudes off the bounce. His excellent handle largely enables that, as does his proficiency in shielding defenders off once he gets a step on them, and his ability to finish through contact. Cat is also a very skilled post scorer. Although he hasn't been overwhelmingly efficient there this year, he uniquely blends strength, touch, and footwork down there with a bag of hooks and turnarounds that I believe makes him among the best in the league as far as post scoring. However, my favorite part about Cat's post game isn't his scoring. It's his playmaking, which is really the reason, along with the perimeter shot making, I am so high on Cat as an elite offensive engine, which is a very, very hard thing to be from the center position. I don't just think Cat is the second best passing big man in basketball. I think there is a gap between him and third place, regardless of what the assist numbers say. Cat has special instincts and vision as a passer. His playmaking doesn't just come out as simple reads out of dribble handoffs or volume touches as the best player on the team. He fires bullets one-handed to the corner, senses shooters with his back turned to them, throws passes over his head kind of a lot, delivers touch passes to cutters in tight windows with anticipation, and can throw a touchdown outlet pass. He regularly does stuff that's a step down from Jokic, but a step up from every other big in the NBA. That is the difference between him and other great passing bigs like Bam and Sabonis. His creativity indicates potential for even more growth, and while he's also the best scorer of that bunch, he's made himself undoubleable because he just doesn't do this stuff sporadically, he wants to make the pass every time. At the beginning of the year, we didn't see this as much out of Towns, as he was averaging just 3.5 assists per game in the 11 contests he played under former head coach Ryan Saunders. However, since Chris Finch took over as head coach on February 22nd, Towns has been empowered to do so much more and has bumped that all the way up to 5.1 assists per game ever since. This high-level playmaking is what rounds out the offensive value that takes the T-Wolves from the worst offense in basketball without Cat to what would be a top 10 one with him, because a great score alone does not always elevate an offense, but a versatile, hyper-efficient scoring playmaking combo does, and that's what Cat is, and that is a special offensive player. Now, on the flip side of his offensive brilliance, questions do fairly remain about Cat's defense. I'd say he's already a solid rim protector, using his size and 7'4" wingspan to average 1.4 blocks per game and hold opponents 5% below their typical field goal percentage inside of 6 feet. Not a great mark, but a fine one. Also, although Cat has had his issues guarding the perimeter this year, Finch has actively entrusted him to show and switch more often instead of just dropping back into the paint as he had previously done every time, saying he likes his feet and hands when he switches out onto guards. Really, I think the jury is still out on Cat's defense. I don't think he'll ever be truly impactful there, but I also think better personnel around him could help him look a lot better. And I ultimately believe that he is the very rare center who can be mediocre defensively and still be the centerpiece of a contender because of his offensive value as a one-man engine. Just look at how he's dragged this team from the cellar to respectability when he's out there this year for evidence of that. So Cat makes up part one of the contender formula. He is the superstar you need to enter the door. As incredible as he is, Cat alone is not enough to single-handedly launch the Timberwolves into contention. The good news is, they have another very good bet to reach star status in Anthony Edwards, who's a pretty remarkable raw talent. Obviously, Ant has not exactly epitomized efficiency or contributions to winning on the year. He's shooting just under 40% and has a number of rookie tendencies, from questionable decision-making offensively at times to inconsistent effort defensively. But he has also taken a massive leap in production post-All-Star break, averaging 24 points per game on 44, 33, 78 splits over his last 19 games, and has a number of tools that scream star. Most notably, Ant is a freak athlete with one of the most explosive first steps in basketball, legitimate strength at 6'4", 225 to enable him to finish through contact, and the body control to deliver acrobatic finishes when he decides that's not his best option. Still, being a super athlete is almost never enough to turn a guard into a true star these days. Inevitably, you need skill as a scorer, particularly as a jump shooter, and feel for the game as a playmaker, which Edwards has. He's not just full steam ahead all the time, as you might expect from an untamed rookie. Instead, he maximizes the value of that burst by varying his pace regularly on his own terms and keeping defenders honest by confidently walking into pull-up jumpers when given a window to do so. His handle is also really developed for a 19-year-old, adding to his deceptiveness, allowing him to weave through traffic, and enabling those explosive changes in direction. Ant is also a perfectly capable playmaker. He definitely has a score-first mentality, but he generally takes what comes to him as a passer too, and has made some nice reads out of the pick and roll on the year. Ant's job as a playmaker will also always be made easier by his tremendous gravity, as this dude is going to spend the next decade collapsing defenses with his ability to get downhill easily, and will accordingly have plenty of open shooters to kick out to often. Personally, I'm not sure Edwards will ever be a primary ball handler. That's going to depend on his development track as a playmaker, but I think his two-man game with Cat is already tantalizing. Edwards cuts well off attention Cat receives, is certainly not lacking for confidence shooting off the catch, and can at times scorch defenses with his pull-up game out of the pick and roll. And of course, all of this will get much better as Edwards' game matures as a whole. Really, everything for Ant right now comes down to consistency. At times, he delivers out-of-this-world finishes at the rim. At others, he struggles to control himself. His jump shot is just about as erratic as can be. Sometimes he seems like he can't miss, at others he misses just about everything. On the year as a whole, he's shooting just 30% on pull-up threes and 33% off the catch. Clearly, neither of those numbers are nearly good enough, but given his comfort shooting them and the technical soundness of his shot, I am very confident they will improve dramatically throughout his career, and I think Ant really projects as a pretty good shooter. Keeping with the theme of inconsistency, Ant's defensive highlights are brilliant, with his elite athletic tools, including a 6'9" wingspan and good ball instincts on full display. But his effort and processing come and go, to say the least. I'm a real optimist on Ant's defense, just for the record. He's been very vocal about the team needing to give more effort there, and has every tool to produce at a high level. But he's a rookie, and rookies almost always lag far behind on that end. The only thing I'd say you could argue is a real long-term concern in Ant's game right now is a lack of touch and an in-between game. Personally, I think Ant will end up as a real threat from the mid-range, and he's already had his moments there, but he's really not right now, and he shot just above 25% on floaters this year, which is pretty abysmal. However, as long as he gets that floater up to a passable level, I think his athletic gifts and potential as a pull-up jump shooter will be more than enough to make him a real high-level pick-and-roll scorer. No matter what, the precedent for rookie guards scoring 17.5 or more points per game in this past decade is pretty good, and although Ant's efficiency on the year as a whole is a cut below the other names you see here, his true shooting percentage post All-Star break is basically average for this group. The lesson is that guards take time to develop, and given all of his tools and the immense room for growth that exists on top of his already impressive production, I'd say Ant profiles as a guy who can be a co-lead scoring option, late-game perimeter closer, and very solid secondary playmaker. Think a bigger Donovan Mitchell with more defensive upside. That is certainly good enough to be the second guy on a championship team, and there aren't many teams out there sitting on two players of that caliber. Ant still has a ways to go to get there, of course, but he's also alongside a co-star who is still likely yet to begin his prime, so their window as a duo is long, and it's more than worth waiting out. So, you have two guys who I think can project as the top two players on a real contender, but that's only part of the puzzle, right? The good news is, I think the rest of this lineup is pretty easy to figure out. Basically add shooting and defense on the wings, maybe find a true point guard better than Ricky Rubio, and you have a really good foundation. The T-Wolves already have one of those guys in rookie Jaden McDaniels, who was one of my favorite prospects in the 2020 class, but was also a guy who came with massive question marks as his effort and production was spotty in college. However, this year has gone about as well as you could hope for Jaden. Since taking over as a full-time starter 12 games ago, he's averaged 10 points per game on 48% from the field and 40% from three. And that may not make your jaw drop, but it's pretty good for a 20-year-old who was seen as a raw prospect coming into things. Although most of his offensive value comes as a catch and shooter right now, Jaden is a very fluid athlete at 6'9" with a legit handle, and let's just say that at his best, he looks plenty like a star. Regardless, what gives McDaniels a much higher floor than was initially expected is that he is abnormally advanced defensively, especially given the context he's operating under. He's super mobile and light on his feet, long, generally engaged, has good hands, and also some real value as a help side shot blocker, as he uses those instincts and athleticism to reject one shot a game. I can pretty confidently say this guy will have the potential to guard 1 through 4 and knock down threes for a long time, with potential to do much more, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see McDaniels as a top 50 player in the league in a few years. Now, there is talent on the rest of this T-Wolves roster, but nobody I'm 100% confident in as a cornerstone piece if this team turns into a contender, and you could argue McDaniels shouldn't be there either, but I'm an optimist. Regardless, let's get into some of those guys. First off, while we're shouting out rookies, I need to briefly mention my guy Leandro Bolmaro, who the Timberwolves took 23rd last year and have currently drafted and stashed. I am a big believer in Bolmaro's potential as a versatile, playmaking offensive weapon who competes on D, and although we have no idea what he is in the NBA, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. I also love Naz Reid and hope he sticks around, but I think he's far from a lock to remain relevant in Minnesota's plans, giving his fit alongside Cat. As a bench center though, I think he could be one of the league's best. The currently suspended Malik Beasley is an absolute bucket, having put up nearly 20 points per game on the year on 40% shooting from three, and is currently under contract for 2 more years guaranteed at about a $15 million per year hit. However, I don't know how you start Beasley alongside Edwards. He limits your defensive versatility at just 6'4", is very limited as a playmaker offensively, and I just don't know that there's enough ball to go around for that lineup, or a need for more isolation bucket getting, which I think this year was a pretty clear indication of. Turn him into an explosive sixth man and I'd be in. But either way, I'm just not sure he's a key part of any contending Minnesota team, and as a 24-year-old on a reasonable contract, they might be able to flip him into a more straightforward 3-and-D wing who more easily translates into winning value alongside this current Timberwolves roster. Now, the last guy on the roster who I think has real long-term potential to matter for the Timberwolves is D'Angelo Russell, and that's with all due respect for Jarrett Culver and Josh Okogie. Culver may only be 22, but I can't say I've seen him do a single thing consistently enough to think he'll be a legit NBA guy, and Okogie's inability to buy a shot will always make him next to impossible to play for legit minutes on a good team, regardless of his defensive value. So it comes down to Russell. Russell's fit here is a complicated one. He's another guy who needs the ball in his hands a lot, and he has no real interest in defense. He also scores at just middling efficiency, and his teams have been worse with him off the floor than on it every season but once in his career. However, he is a tremendously skilled offensive player who shoots 40% from beyond the arc, has one of the league's better floaters and general difficult shot-making ability, and is just a good pick-and-roll scorer and facilitator, with sensational change in pace and the ability to command the game in a way that Ant certainly can't right now and may never be able to. He's a 20-point-per-game scorer who was the centerpiece of a playoff offense just 2 years ago. Not many people can do that, and he just turned 25. The question is basically just, is that what the Timberwolves need, and can he coexist alongside Towns and Edwards? Right now, we don't really know because we haven't seen them all together all that much. However, when we have, the results have been pretty good. When just Russell and Towns play together, which has been for a total of 166 minutes this year, the Timberwolves have posted a net rating of plus 4.9, the equivalent of a fringe top 5 team, and posted a sensational offensive rating of 119.6, which would be the best of all time. When those two and Edwards play together, which has been for a total of just 72 minutes, they've posted an offensive rating of 136, but an abysmal defensive rating of 123.2. With some adjustments, I do think it could work offensively long term. In fact, it could be quite overpowering if D'Lo leans more towards playmaking than scoring, and both he and Edwards embrace active off-ball movement, which probably won't happen for D'Lo, but should for Edwards. And if Edwards takes strides defensively and they put other quality guys on the wings, their defense might be passable enough to justify that value and the defensive deficiencies of D'Lo at the 1. I also think there may be something to their recent strategy of bringing D'Lo off the bench, where he could really run the show and rack up a few Sixth Man of the Year awards. Obviously, there would be no Beasley in that world, or there's something to at least heavily staggering D'Lo and Edwards minutes. But regardless, I don't think they need D'Lo to work long term. The upside of the D'Lo Towns pick and roll is more than intriguing, but if Russell's going to demand another max contract after this one, which expires in 2023, I'd rather spend my money to round out this roster and pick up a more straightforward, simple, two-way point guard, maybe like a campaign type, because I already have my scoring 1-2 punch. So really, we'll see how this whole D'Lo experiment works out, but they just don't need him for me to be confident in this core. Now, the final component in the Timberwolves' future roster is related to the coming draft, and since this involves hypotheticals, we won't dig into it too much, but we do need to touch on it. This year, the Timberwolves keep their pick only if it lands in the top 3, which there's about a 40% chance of. If that 40% chance lets them down and the pick falls, it goes to the Warriors. However, a top 3 pick in this draft would mean a generational talent. It could be Cade Cunningham, a big guard who could blend scoring and playmaking in a special way and would increase my confidence in this team becoming a contender to about 100%. Could be Evan Mobley, who is in my opinion the best draft prospect in at least the last half decade, unicornish enough to fit alongside Cat in my opinion, and capable of changing the game defensively and turning into a versatile star on offense. Or a Jonathan Kuminga, who may not be considered a top 3 guy in the draft, but I think would fit best in Minnesota out of the remaining guys as a versatile two-way weapon. I would pretty much put my foot down right now and say Cade and Mobley will be stars, and that on top of an existing 2-star foundation would pretty much make this a championship core, signed, sealed, delivered. But they're not there, and they may never end up there. So a lot rides on this lottery as far as taking my confidence from they're really good to whoa, this team is going to win titles. Look, it's not like the Timberwolves are on the cusp here. They need to fill out their roster with way more quality guys. 2 of their pieces I'm most excited about are rookies, and I still don't think we can say with absolute certainty that they found the right coach. But it's not every day that a team finds himself with a talent like KarlAnthony Towns and a guy like Anthony Edwards alongside him. And it's even rarer still that a team has a chance to add another superstar talent to that core if things break right. So yes, things are bleak for the Timberwolves right now, and they suck. But the future is bright. To those of you who have made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and as always, I hope you've enjoyed. If you want more content like this, you can check out the podcast that Logan and I do, also called Nerd Sesh. We live stream it here on YouTube, on Twitter, and you can also find it wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify. We do shows Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. Monday is always a show geared towards some sort of historical sports topic in the NBA and NFL, and then Wednesday and Saturdays, we do just current NBA shows, and you can find a bunch of highlights from those podcasts and graphic content, whatever you're looking for, on our Twitter at nerd_sesh and on Instagram at nerdsesh. You can follow us there. And of course, if you like this YouTube specific content, we do stuff like this every week, so you can stick around here and enjoy some of the stuff that we've done previously. But other than that, guys, hope you've enjoyed.